everyone. I am Dublish, Assistant Professor in MC Department in Akgec Engineering College, Ghaziabad. Today I am going to deliver a lecture on Servlet, which is an important topic of web technology. So let's start. Before starting, first we'll have to know what is Servlet. So basically, Servlet are the programs that run on a web or application server and act as a middle layer between a request coming from a web browser or other HTTP clients and database or application on the HTTP server. So through using Servlet, we can collect input from user through web page forms or present records from a database or another source and create a web page dynamically. So basically, we can say Servlet is a server program that runs on a server. So Servlet executes within the address space of a web server. It is not necessary to create a separate process to handle each client request. And basically, Servlet are platform independent because they are written in Java. And Java Security Manager on the server enforces a set of restrictions to protect the resources on a server machine. So Servlet are trusted. And the full functionality of the Java class in libraries is available to a Servlet, and it can communicate with applet databases or other software via the sockets and the RMI mechanism. So this is the Servlet architecture. First, we have web browsers. Web browser we can connect to the HTTP server with the help of HTTP protocol, and we have database. In database, we collect all the Servlet programs and then run on a server through protocol execute on web browser. Now, the question arises: what is the Servlet task? So basically, Servlet perform the following major tasks. It read the explicit data sent by the client browser and include an HTML form on a web page, or it could also come from an applet or a custom HTTP client program. And then read the implicit HTTP request data sent by the client, means browser. And this include cookies, media type, and compression schemes the browser understand, and so forth. After it process the data and generate the result. This proof may require talking to a database, executing on RMI or Corba call, invoking a web service, or computing the response directly. After that, send the explicit data, that is a document, to the client browser. This document can be sent in a variety of formats, including text, HTML, or XML, or in the form of binary XML, GIF images, or in Excel datasheet. Later, we can send the implicit HTTP response to the client browser. So this includes telling the browser or other client what type of document is being returned. Example, HTML, we can set cookies and caching parameter and other such tasks. So Servlet jobs are: firstly, read explicit data sent by the client, then read implicit data sent by the client through request header and generate the result, and send the explicit data back to the client in the form of HTML data, and then send the implicit data to the client through status code and response header. So what are the Servlet package? Now, a Java Servlet are Java classes run by a web server that has an interpreter that support the Java Servlet specification. So servlets can be created using the javax.servlet and through javax.servlet.http package. So basically, which are a standard part of the Java Enterprise Edition and expanded version of the Java class library that supports large-scale development projects. So these classes implement the Java Servlet and JSP specification. So the Java Servlet have been created and compiled just like any other Java language. After you install the Servlet package and add them to your computer class path, you can compile Servlet with the JDK compiler or any other current compiler. So now, what is the Servlet interface? Servlet interface basically contains the common method of all the servlet, that is provide the common behavior for all servlet. Servlet interface define method that all servlet must implement. Servlet interface need to be implemented for creating any servlet either directly or indirectly. It provides three lifecycle methods that are used to initialize the servlet, to service the request, and to destroy the servlet, and two non-lifecycle method. Now the question arises: what are the methods include to create servlet interface? First method we have init. Init, it is used to initialize the servlet. This method is called only once by the web container when it load the servlet. So the syntax of init is public void init servlet config through servlet exception. Now second method is service. Service provide a servlet request and servlet response. So it is used to respond a request. It is called for every new request by the web container. Now destroy. It is used to destroy the servlet. This method is called only once by the web container when all the thread of the servlet have excited or in a timeout case. Next is get servlet config. It returns a servlet config object. This config object is passed in init method. Servlet config object contain initialization parameter and startup configuration for the servlet. And get servlet information. It returns a string of information about servlet author, version, and copyright, etc. The servlet lifecycle. The entire lifecycle of servlet is managed by the servlet container, which uses the JavaScript servlet and the servlet interface to understand the servlet object and manage it. So before creating a servlet object, let's understand the lifecycle of the servlet object, which is actually understanding how the servlet container manages the servlet object. So basically, we goes through 4 stages. First one is loading a servlet, initializing the servlet, requesting, handling, and destroying the servlet. First, init executed once when the servlet is first loaded. Not called for each request. So service called in a new thread by server for each request, dispatched to doGet and doPost method. DoGet, doPost method handle the get and post requests, and destroy called when server delete all the servlet instance. Not called after each request. So this is the life cycle of the servlet life cycle. Firstly, we have start, then loading the initialization. Through init, we can initialize that is now ready for somewhere. After service, we have handling request and destroy end. This is the end of the servlet. This is how we can write the first program in Java servlet, that is hello world. For this, we have to import these libraries. So first of all, we have to import the Java package, then Java servlet and through package, Java servlet package, and this is the syntax of the servlet. This is how we can print the message of hello Java. A servlet that generates HTML. We can tell the browser that you are sending HTML through response.setContent type, and we can also modify the print statement to build a web page. Print statement can output print HTML tag. This is the syntax. This is the program through which we can create a servlet and generate HTML. Now the question is, what is CGI script? CGI script, basically known as CGI, stand for Common Gateway Interface. So in CGI, client send a request to a server and server start a CGI script, and script computes a result for server and quits, and another server returns response to a client, and another client send a request, and server start the CGI script again, etc. This is how the working of CGI. Servlet की working कैसे है? A servlet working, client send a request to a server start a servlet, servlet computes a result for server and does not quit, and server returns response to the client, and another client send a request. Server call the servlet again, etc. This is the working of servlet. Now the difference between servlet and CGI script. Basically, the advantage of running a servlet does not require creating a separate process each time. So a servlet stays in memory, so it does not have to be reloaded each time. So we have there only one instance handling multiple requests, not a separate instance for each request. And disadvantage is less choice of language. CGI script can be in any language. So in practice, most servlet extend the javax.servlet.http servlet class, and some servlet extend javax.servlet.generic servlet class. Important servlet method we have. When a servlet is first start up using init method, init should perform any necessary initialization, and every servlet request result in a call to service method. We have a service call another method depending on the type of service request. Usually you would override the called method of interest, not service itself, And service handle multiple simultaneous requests. So it in the method it called must be thread safe. When the servlet is shut down, destroy method is called, and destroy is called only once but must be thread safe because the other thread may be still running. The superclass, every class must extend generic servlet or subclass of generic servlet. Generic servlet is a protocol independent, so you could write a servlet to process any protocol. In general, we almost want to respond to an HTTP request, so you extend HTTP servlet. And a subclass of HTTP servlet must override at least one method, usually do get, do post, do put, delete, init, and destroy or get servlet information. Now the working of do get method. This method service a get request. This method user request to get the information that was sent to it, and the method does not return a value. Instead, it using response to get an input output stream and output it response. Since the method does input output, it can throw an input output exception. Any other type of exception should be encapsulated as a servlet exception. The do post method work exactly in the same way. Now, the important point is get and post method. A get request supplies parameter in the form of URL, means name is equal to value and name is equal illegal space added to make it more legible. Actual spaces in the parameter value are encoded by the plus sign. Other special characters are encoded in hexadecimal form. For example, an ampersand is represented by the percentile 26. Parameter name can occur more than once with different value. A post request supplies parameter in the same syntax, only it is in the body section of the request and is therefore harder for the user to see. Now the input parameter are retrieved via message to the HTTP servlet request. So most of the interesting sub method are inherited from the super interface by the servlet request, and the public enumeration get parameter name returns no enumeration of the parameter name. If no parameter return an empty enumeration. Public string get parameter returns the value of the parameter name as a string. If the parameter does not exist, it will return null. If the name has multiple value, only the first method is returned. And the public string get parameter value returns an array of the value of the parameter name. If the parameter does not exist, it will return null. So this is the example of input parameter and Java review data from the string or parameter value which we retrieve as in the form of a string. And frequently these strings represent number and you want the numeric number. Similarly for short, float and long. So these can call through a number format exception, which is a subclass of runtime exception. Now the servlet API. So two packages contain the subclasses and the servlet that are required to build servlet. These are in the package of javex.servlet and javex.servlet.http. Now the question is, what is session tracking? So basically HTTP we know as a stateless protocol. Each request is independent of the previous one. In some application it is necessary to save the state information. A servlet uses this request through object get session method to retrieve the current HTTP session object. Public HTTP session, HTTP servlet request dot get session. This method returns the current session associated with the user making the request. If the user has no current valid session, this method create one if create is true or return null if create is false. A session can be created via the get session method of HTTP servlet request. A new session is created if one does not already exist, and method to manage session is get attribute, get attribute name, remove attribute. This is the example of servlet. So when you first request the servlet, the browser displays one line with the current data and time information. On subsequent invocation, two lines are displayed. The first line shows the data and time when the servlet was last exit. The second line shows the current date and time. Thanks. This is the thanks enough from today's my side. This is about the servlet. Jai Hind.